Good morning. Ayin Beis. Literally at the last lines in the last page 1477, which is essentially elaboration on the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, which we're going to get back to shortly when we finish this. And there we're on page 384. That's the corresponding pages. So we're learning here about unity, ultimate unity of existence with godliness, the divine, a seamless ultimate unity that from God's perspective, we've learned that existence is simply a form of expression, an expression of His. From our point of view, we need to come to understand that. But we could. And that's what he was saying, the Yichud Lamat B'Neshama Yisroel Shemiyachdim Eis Yisbarach. We do it through a three-step process of Mamata Lamaila, of Yichud Tata, Yichud Ilah, and then that which unites both of them. Tzichem Liyachad Beis Yichudim, which means that the Ayin of the Yesh, meaning the divine energy that engages with and relates to existence, also comes from and is one with the source Atzmus. And though it goes through stages and concealment in order to be able to create existence, so we should have our independent consciousness, but from God's point of view, there's no, in this context, there's no richug v'nivdal. It's not richug v'nivdal. It's not with any distance or any separation, because the tzimtzum does not interrupt, does not in any way affect. It doesn't have any effect in contrast in legabe atzmus, from the point of view of atzmus. So therefore, gam kamasha babis galas hariyom miyuchad betachlis batzmuseh. So even the way it expresses itself in a revealed state, it's still utterly united with the core. And by extension, since the divine energy is such, so also everything that was created, everything is a transmission from Atzmus and Miyuchad Be'izbarah B'tachlis HaYichud. V'rak b'chinas is Galus Bobat. Everything, therefore, is just an expression from that divine level. And that's where we stopped. We have 4 more lines, the end of the Hemshech. And I'm going very deliberately, slowly, because each line has a lot of import power and impotency. So I'm going to continue learning now from the 4th line from the bottom of page 1477, the end of the Hemshech, the end at least of what we have that the Rebbe Rashab wrote. And the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. So he says like this, a parenthesis. So now he's adding something to the points that we learned earlier. Remember, we learned that the etzem is beyond expression, beyond revelation, beyond consciousness even. A reality that just is a reality, period. But then God chose and wants to create existence. That means that he wants to create something that's not built in Metzias Nimsa, non-existential reality that's beyond any form of expression and manifestation as we know it. So that means he goes into that there's now a thing called Oyr emerges. Oyr is revelation, it's expression. That's called Gili. In the Oyr itself, we learned there's 2 levels of Gili. Gili to himself, which is above existence, beyond existence, and the Gili that relates to the student, to the creation, to existence. And both originate in that source. And we said even the lower level he called is also his Galus Bilvad. He said it on top of the page several times, emphasizing it very clearly. And as I said, it seems to me it's a chiddush that doesn't say other places. In others, from God's point of view, existence is just another expression of it. It's true, it's an expression of a reality that was not there before, in other words, but so is Oyer was not there before. Even Gili itself was not there before there was Gili. When I say not before, I mean obviously conceptually before. So there's just the concept of expression, and then there's an expression that relates to existence. And that is what comes with Galus, like the teacher, the ideas as he understands them, and the ideas as he's going to convey them to a student. That makes it more bizgalus, more manifest. As he said in the parentheses closer to the top of the page, Yeser Masim Yitzur, that you could have that outer dimension, that expression that relates to another without any concealment. It's just a form of expression. It's another form. So just like God can express himself in bligvul ways, in infinite ways, he can express himself in one way. 10 spheres, not infinite spheres. That doesn't make it less atzmus. It just means he chose to express it in a finite form. From his point of view, it's just another expression of his. I should also point out he's not using the word yechelis. Often in Chassidus, when this level is discussed, well, it's not that often, but where the rare few times it is discussed, sometimes the word yechelis, God's capacity to do it. That's a word that Alter Rebbe introduced. In other words, it's trying to explain how, from God's point of view, all it is his capacity to do it. It's not an actual reality. It's just God's capacity. He doesn't use that word, so I don't want to use it either. It could be he's talking about a different level. Maybe it's a lower level. Maybe it is the same level. I'd rather not speculate on that right now because there's many ways to discuss it. But regardless, I think chelis may be higher because chelis means it didn't even come into being. Here he wants to say the yichud is with an actual existence. There is Bereishis bara l'kimus hashemayim v'sa'aretz, like he pointed out at the bottom of page 1474. There is a Yisavus. There is a creation. Yechelis is referring to the level where God can do anything he would, so a capacity. But there is something in common. But bottom line is, the existence, therefore, is just an expression of the divine, and it says galus, bulvad, from that point of view. So interestingly, from our point of view, Oyer is not yesh ma'ayin from atzmus. It's a gilia helam, it's megala. Because Oyer is dovik to moyer, me'ena moyer. It's expressing what the yesh, on the other hand, comes through a tzimtzum. And the yesh does not feel the divine as light feels its source. But from God's point of view, the gilia of Oyer and the gilia of yesh are both eizgalos, meaning they're both not something, well, you could say both things. They're both something novel and new, because they're not atzmus. On the other hand, the creation is also eizgalos, meaning it's just another expression of the divine. So now he says, so just like the Oyer b'chlal hu b'chinas hagilui, so the Oyer in general is a gilui. It's a state where the divine is becoming expressed. The Hisavas, the creation, and the desire for the creation, like he pointed out earlier, there's a desire for the creation. It's more than just the scholars of Oyer. Oyer, it's just saying, I want to express myself. The Ratzon and the Hisavas, and the Ratzon for Hisavas is I want to express myself in a form of creation. And creation already is more revealed, more expressed, so to speak, has more definition, if you wish. That's what he's adding here in the parentheses. Here's his galus yeser, like he said also on top. His galus yeser. Said it several times, this expression. Let's just see one more thing. Just a moment. Okay. So that explains the parentheses, which also adds understanding that the Yichud Elah and Yichud Tata are one, because they're both a Izgalus of God's unity. One is a Izgalus that doesn't take on any shape and form that relates to existence, and one is a Izgalus that takes on the shape and form that's expressed in the form of existence. And the key thing to remember here, that this isn't just from Atzmos' point of view, but Tzrichim liyachad beizeh Yechudim, we also, Neshamas Yisroel, who are miyachad, we also miyachad these two Yechudim, so we come to appreciate that even Yichud Tata is one, seamlessly one with Etzem, just like Yichud Elah. And now he finally comes back to the words in Shema. Till now, he just said miyachid. So he says, "V'zeh inyan Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad." So just to point out, where is he? What thread is he closing here? So we said Yichud Elah, Yichud Tata was on page 1472. But there he also spoke about Shema and Baruch Shem Kved Machus Elolam Vod, and saying clearly the two Yechudim, Shema and Baruch Shem, or in Shema itself, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But this takes us back now, all the way back to page 1466. Remember, from 1467 and on, or 1466 and on, he spoke about Yeshma Ayin, what the Yichud is about, the higher Ayin, the lower Ayin, Yichud Tata, Yichud Elah, Das Ayin, Das Tachten, and the parsa in between, the partition, and then by Atzmus, he unites both of them. Now he came back and said, and the way Atzmus is united both of them within Atzmus, that's how we have to be miyachid. And now he goes back, and that's the meaning of Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which began in 1466. So it's very clear from that what he's finishing now, the last three lines of the Hemshech, takes us back to 1466. However, he doesn't go to the next step, which is how it affects the animal soul. He's going to stop right here with, and he says, "V'zeh inyan Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad." This is the inyan of Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad that we say in Shema, and like he explained, those are the two express Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad, Yichud Elah and Yichud Tata. Hashem Elokeinu b'chinas Yichud Elah. Hashem Elokeinu, that's Yichud Elah. Hashem Echad, Yichud Tata. And the difference, as he said earlier, is b'chinas Abba ve'ima v'zun. Yichud Elah is Chachma and Bina, and Yichud Tata is Zon Malchus. Commotion is Bar Le'il. At the bottom of page 1466, he said that explicitly. So he's clearly taking us back to page 1466, where he said the difference between Ava and Yichud Zun. Ava is higher than existence. Zun, within Ishtalshlus itself, Chachma Bina is the higher level of Yichud Elah, and the lower level of Yichud Tata is Zon Malchus. It says at the bottom of page 1466. But now he said, and so okay, so there's two levels, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But now comes the third, unifying both of these unities. V'shneim heim b'pasuk echad, and both of them are in one verse in Shema. This is what he said before. Who that indicates on lemahave echad be'echad, that the echad of Yichud Tata is connected and united with the echad of Yichud Elah. Shagam Yichud Tata, that also the lower level of Yichud, the one that relates to existence, who is in truth, who b'chinas Yichud k'ma Yichud Elah mamish. That we come to understand how Atzmus understands it, that Yichud Tata is mamish, like Yichud Elah, because all it is another expression of the divine etzem, of the essence. And with that, he finishes the Hemshech. So he brought us back to the beginning of the discussion on page 1466. But what he doesn't do is, if you go earlier in 1466, why did he begin the whole piece on Shema Yisroel in the first place? To answer how a neshama could poil bittul and nefesh habamis. How we get to V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. And to explain why dafka neshama, a neshama has this power. and to also explain Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, how it affects the Nefesh Habamis, that it becomes Shemen, the oil, the fuel, to fuel the divine soul, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokeinu. But the Hemshel does not go back there. So what he did go back to is the bottom of 1466, but not the beginning, the middle of 1466. And that, we need the Maimer and Torah and the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe, who do go back to understand how this now applies to V'ahavtas Hashem Elokeinu. And that's now why we learned all that, was to come and understand, okay, so the Rebbe Rashab elaborated up to this point, but what happens next? How does it affect the animal soul? So we could speculate, or much better, we have actual text, the text that the Rebbe Rashab himself used to explain everything till here. So we have really the benefit of two things. The text from the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab's explanation of that text, which elaborates a lot more than they do. So together, we're going to have a much richer understanding of those Maimarim as well. So next step is to go back to the Mittler Rebbe and see, so what happens next? What's the next part of this narrative? Which is going to be about how this affects the Yetzer, the Nefesh Habamis, and the B'chol Levavcha B'shnei Yetzerecha. And with that, we conclude again, Ayin Beis. I say again because we did it once, before we learned all the other material. Now we just learned it again in the context. And you see, you learn it again, you appreciate it on a deeper level. And it's always worth going reviewing to be able to fully, or as much as possible, understand what we're learning, what he's teaching us here. Okay. I'll stop if anybody wants to ask anything. And then I'm ready to go back to the Mittler Rebbe. And really, I want to show how this flows. And it's like, it's obvious. It's not even it's not my theory that it flows. It's very clear exactly where the Mittler Rebbe continues from where we left off. So we have to say that the Rebbe Rashab would have used that and quoted that. Again, what he would have said exactly and how much he would have elaborated, I don't know. He just wrote what the Mittler Rebbe writes. He may have elaborated a lot more. Most likely he would have. But we'll do the best we can with what we have.
How would you define that you are miyached yichud elo in yichud Torah together? People, we're talking about people in this world. Yichud Torah is very nice, but do you understand that you could get it? What does it mean, miyached yichud elo? You could feel it?
I mean, you're asking me. This is what we've been learning. You're asking me to explain what we learned, or something specific new.
No.
I mean, what else can I say? I gave many examples for it. Yesterday we spoke about being in the zone. I gave examples of the example he uses, the teacher and the student. I'm not sure what. Are you asking me just in general? I mean, are we just going back to square one?
The teacher with the student. The student could reach.
So we spoke yesterday at length that the student, a 5-year-old cannot reach, but a 40-year-old is koi in a shadaita derab. That means as we grow and expand our containers, we can come to a point of understanding our teacher in the depths of what the teacher. I mean, what is the problem here? We grow.
Okay.
As we grow, we can understand things not just from our perspective, but from God's perspective, as much as possible. So he gave us a picture. God's perspective, his existence, is simply an expression of the divine. Initially, we cannot understand that. But as we grow in our understanding, we go from Yehuda Tato, where we take something in existence and we align it to godliness. Then we come to understand that all of existence is completely nullified in the face of godliness, Yechudi Allah. Then we come to understand that even the divine that relates to existence is just like Yechudi Allah, meaning it's completely only divine. There's nothing else. This is what's expected for us to reach that level. This is the avodah of coming to that higher level of understanding. So I'm not sure. Do you want me to just go over everything we learned?
No, you made it clear to me. I had some not clarity. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Rabbi Jacobson, here's my question to the Rabbi's
Basically,
point.
There's bitl hayesh, there's bitl b'metzias, and then you come to learn that bitl hayesh, really, on the deepest level, is just like bitl b'metzias, because From God's point of view, the yesh is not like we see it first. We begin, I exist, and my existence is aligned with God. Then you come to a point, my whole existence is just an expression of godliness.
Robert Jacobson, to this point, I know this is obviously, as we talked about yesterday, is an individual, pursuit, and everybody is at different level. But earlier, there was a mention of when Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to Hashem, panim el panim, it says that it was the union of Zah and Malchut. That now, by this definition, means the Yehuda Tata, not Ilah, which we kind of counter.
Where did we learn that panim b'panim is Zah Malchut?
That's what I can't remember. If it was from this Hamshech, it was somewhere else in Echad, but I can bring. I'll bring the source for you. That the panim el panim of Moshe Rabbeinu was basically the Zah and Malchut, the union of Zah and Malchut. That's why he couldn't see him face to face. He saw the back of Hashem's head as if it was. So the question is now, I understand everybody's at their own level, but even Moshe Rabbeinu, based upon that, it's Yehuda Tata, not Ilah, which is not, doesn't make sense.
First of all, why not? Why Moshe Rabbeinu also has Yehuda Tata and Yehuda Ilah, and the three levels. Everybody goes through that, Moshe included.
What would be the expression of Moshe's Yehuda Elah? That's what I guess my question would be.
I don't know. You have to find me the source so I can look inside and I can tell you how it would relate, or if it does relate.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? So let's move now back to the Mittler Rebbe. This is my Mori Admur Amtsoi Bereishis, Chanukah Maimer, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, top of page 384. If you're following along, again, these pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. Right after the Ayin Beis text, you'll see Alter Rebbe's text, Mittler Rebbe's text. Just have to click on the link. It'll take you to a PDF of all these pages, if you want to follow along. Even if you don't follow the text inside, I do explain it sufficiently, I believe, so don't worry about it. In other words, you must follow it. I will explain every line, but I am reading it from there. Okay. So it flows pretty smoothly, actually. If you go to the top of page 384, just to refresh ourselves, so till 384, he was talking about the yichud of Yehuda Ilah and Yehuda Tata, what he called Das Elyon and Das Tachten, what he called the combination, the paradox of Mokem Ha'aron Eina Min Amida, that Iyu Tofiz Be Kula Alma, Ve'einat Elam Tofiz Be, like he said, Les Machshav Tvisa Be Klal. So he contains existence, but existence does not contain him. So that's how how Atzmus sees it. If you look at the bottom of 383, he says it clearly. It combines these both hafchim. That's where he also spoke about how the Aron carries its bearers. The Aron itself carried the ones that carried it, which again is that paradox. They're not hafchim. They're gam koyach eliki. Shenitvas bam, k'moish kosev adnei bam, shema'avon ismael yesh lesh machshav tfis beklal al kei nesav nasa. The Im Kain, I'm reading literally the last lines of the paragraph on top of page 384. Harizeh ma'ayin mamish k'moi kodim shenivra elam. So the yesh, the ayin that's within the yesh is exactly like the ayin, like before. So there's no difference in Yehuda Ilah and Yehuda Tata, Kanal Vidal. Exactly what, more or less in different words, what we just read in Ayin Beis. The difference is there's a continuation here. Here he continues. And you'll also see that the Rebbe Rashab, obviously his elaboration gives us a lot more Havana and understanding in this union of Yehuda Ilah, Yehuda Tata, many different expressions that the Mittler Rebbe doesn't even talk about. Namely, for example, the concept of his galus that we discussed, the general idea of the two Ritzenis I'm not going to go through all the details because we learned them already. What we will do is now comes back. So since we're talking now, and it's been spelled out that we in Shema Yisroel are meant to unify the two unions of Yichud Eloh, Yichud Tata. That's Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So now the Mittler Rebbe continues. V'zeu klolos in Yichud Elokus, b'Parsha Shema Yisroel. So mamish what we just learned in the Mittler Rebbe's words. And this is the general union that is spoken about in the Parsha of Shema Yisroel. The Yisroel Ola b'machshava. So he adds this: Yisroel arose in God's thought, because Yisroel are rooted in machshava of the Eibush in the highest levels. They are essentially the ambassadors that God created in order to fulfill this yichud. The neshamas are able to do this because they're not part of ishtalshlus. They come from higher than ishtalshlus. Because if you think about it, if you exist in the world of existence, if you're part of existence, then the most you can do is align existence with godliness. But here we're talking about reaching these highest levels in Atzmus. So that's why the Mittler Rebbe adds, and just for the record, the Rebbe Rashab did mention this earlier. I have to find where, about Yisroel Olam Machshava. I'm almost sure he mentioned it earlier. I don't know if in this context or in different context, but there's definitely, this is critical piece, because why do Neshamas Yisrael have this power? Because they come from a higher place. They come from Olam Machshava. So they come all the way from the so-called the innermost levels of where God's desire for creation came in the first place. So since they are Lamaila Meseder Ishtalshus, and Primius Atzmus of Elikus, higher than the cosmic order of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Nasiya, the Beis Mine Ayin, which we know manifests in two levels of Ayin, the Das Elyon, the Das Tachten, in the higher perspective and the lower perspective. So neshamas are higher than that. Shalkein Yisrael zeh. Therefore, Yisrael, who's rooted there, even though every neshama specifically is just one small spark of this divine essence in his nefesh alakis, in his divine soul, yaskil v'yasig v'yizbenim b'dover zeh shalamayla meishtalshlus, can conceive and contemplate on this matter that's higher than ishtalshlus, the seva of umamala, higher than the ishtalshlus of seva of kalam and mamala kalam. So that's the meaning of Shema Yisroel, why we say Yisroel, Shema Yisroel dafka. Because Yisroel ola b'machshava, so that's why Yisroel can be contemplate and understand Havaya Elokeinu and Havaya Echad, that they are all one, Das Elyon and Das Tachten, because Yisroel is rooted in a place that's higher than. So when the Shamas come down below, they have that capacity through their Avodah, obviously. Now, it would have been fascinating to see how the Rebbe Rashab would have spelled this out and elaborated upon. It's hard for me to imagine that he would not have, because just the style of the Rebbe Rashab, but unfortunately we don't have that because he didn't finish writing the Hemshech. But this is what the Mittler Rebbe does say. But I will say, earlier in Ayin Beis, you may remember he spoke at length about the Nitzutz Katan, Yechida connected to Yochid, how neshamas are higher than Torah, but then when they come down below, the Torah is higher than neshamas. The Torah illuminates the neshamas, but in their root, the neshamas are higher than Torah, which is very much part of the discussion of Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam and Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Eir. So all this is going to come together soon as we learn the Mittler Rebbe, and then we'll go back how it's explained in Ayin Beis. The only thing is, the Ayin Beis doesn't explain it here because we already finished the Hemshech. But earlier he did explain at length how neshamas are rooted in these highest levels. So that does connect to what the Mittler Rebbe says here. I'll find it and look inside. I want to see how close, whether the Rebbe Rashab indeed maybe even quoted there from here. That would be very powerful, because then we would have that link. But I'll have to find that. I'll look it up later. Okay. I'm already looking because I'm very curious to see that, but let me see something. One thing I just want to see quickly, 1 second. Yeah. The Nitzur's cotton is on page 1406 and 1407. And I believe there he spoke about this to some extent, where the neshamas are rooted, all of the machshavim. But I don't know. Okay. So this is the additional piece on that Shema Yisroel. Any questions on what we just learned? Any questions on that?
Why does it require that the Jews and the Neshamas of Israel have to be higher than the Shtalshalis to be able to accomplish this? When we just got finished saying that the Ayin of the Yesh Nivra is this exactly the same as Ayin of the Yesh Miti, and they're truly one. That Bittul Yesh is Bittul Metzias also. So why wouldn't a non-Jew who doesn't have an Nefesh Elokis be able to realize that he is also, one with Yehudi Tata, one with Bittul Metzias? Why would he need to be? Why would Neshama be higher? Have to be higher than that to come to that understanding? Why couldn't they come to that? I guess Shar Yichud Muna is also shaykh to the non-Jews, as the Rebbe has talked about, I guess, a few times. So that's my question.
So first of all, he didn't mention here non-Jews. He just mentioned Yisrael. He didn't talk about whether non-Jews can or cannot.
Well, he says
so I just want to make that very clear. He doesn't say anything about it.
But he says a nefesh elokis.
Yeah, but you mentioned non-Jews. He doesn't mention non-Jews.
Right.
So okay, I don't want to go. It's another discussion whether non-Jews, what they could reach, what they can't reach. He's talking here about Yisrael and nefesh elokis, correct? So the answer is very obvious. We're not talking about just understanding. We're talking about being miyachid, to actually experience it. So it would be like a person, Chassidus talks about, you can only go as far as your source is. Meaning, for example, if a person has a particular talent, there's a tremendous amount of talent, but they can only achieve as much as they have. They can't go beyond what they were allocated. So if you want to get to a place of appreciating and internalizing a level of yichud that's higher than existence, you have to go to a place that's higher than existence. If a person down below would just remain a creation, so they can only go to the source of creation. And the source of creation is whatever the divine energy is invested in them. But to see it from the point of view of God, Atzmus, that's higher than Ishtalshus, higher than Das Tachten, and higher than Das Elyon, you have to have something from there in your DNA that allows you to experience it. So can everyone understand that there's a level like that? That's a good question. What does understanding mean, and how deep? That's just a general explanation what he's saying here. That since Yisrael, all of Machshava, and the Nefesh Elokis, so they have within them a so-called spark from that place. So therefore, in other words, you can't understand something that is completely not within you at all. But God gave that inside of the Yisrael, inside of the Nefesh Elokis. as far as non-Jews go, so this is a bigger discussion, because on one hand, we know it says that every human being is created in the divine image. Adam was created in the divine image, and all human beings are children of Adam. So what does it mean that in Tanya, that he says, Nefesh Elikis, Miteiche Nofach, Vayipach Ba'apav Nishmas Chaim, that is coming from the inner Pnimius, like he says here, Pnimius and Atzmus, Adam, and therefore every human being has also a soul from that place. So that's another discussion which I don't want to go into here altogether, because since he doesn't talk about it, but you do. But the fact remains that that every human being, including non-Jews, have that level of soul. So the question is,
there would be no other nations; it would be only.
That's correct. That's one of the explanations. That's what the Arizal says, and that's one of the explanations. But now, after the Chet, the question is, do they not have a Yipach Ba'apan of Nishmas Chaim, a neshama that, I mean, what gives them life? So it's true, we know what it says in Tanya, but this is a discussion outside the scope of Ayin Beis. It's another discussion. What we do, how do non-Jews experience this? As a matter of fact, tonight I'm giving a class, how do Jews really look at Gentiles?
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking about that.
My observation, just quickly, is that the source of why the non-Jews hate the Jews? Is that because we have access, perhaps, to something that they don't have access to? Or, I know it's a different discussion, but that just question arose. So maybe you'll.
I gave some very intense classes on this topic, the roots of anti-Semitism, whether subconsciously they feel that. Maybe. But the interesting thing is that when Mashiach comes, it says, Mala Oretz Deis Hashem K'mayim Le'yam and it says, V'ro Kol Amei Oretz. I'm sorry, it says, V'lo Yesa Kol Ha'elam El L'dases Hashem B'lvad. So you're talking about non-Jews also experiencing godliness and connecting to godliness. So this goes back to discussions we've had in the past. I always refer to Likutei Sichos, volume 13, page 230, the Rebbe's footnotes there. But being that it's out of the scope of Ayin Beis, I don't want to go there right now. It will be a completely different discussion. It would be really not even respectful or right when you're learning, we're listening to a Maimer from the Rebbe Rashab or from the Mittler Rebbe, and they're not talking about it. Why are we talking about it? So I think it deserves conversation, it deserves explanation, and maybe very intriguing, and maybe even more intriguing to some than what we're learning here, but we are learning what we're learning. So I'd rather not go there right now, and especially that I have talked about this many times, even in this class, I've given a few times, talked about the Jews and non-Jews, and even now given some sources, and tonight I will talk about it. So see that as a complement to complement what it says here. But regardless, there is an element that the Yisrael does have this. And the question remains, can other human beings also achieve it or not? The answer briefly is, of course, they can achieve it to some extent. Can they achieve it like Yisrael? That's another discussion, as I said, part of a broader scope outside of what we're learning right now.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Keep in mind that even in Yisrael, not all Yisrael are equal. The Rebbe, I am sure, experiences yichud of yichud tata differently than you and I do. So there are differences even among the Jewish people. So that alone tells you that there are levels in experiencing this. So you could say that by extension, there are also levels that that others can experience it, even if not, they're not in the level of Yisrael. But there are requirements of certain Aveda to get to a place like that. Okay?
Thank you.
You were mentioning Ayin Beis.
What?
You were mentioning Ayin Beis. Not everybody could achieve certain things. It explains why we say a tzaddik, to reach the highest level of a tzaddik, is a matane. No matter what the person is going to do, no matter what the neshama is going to do, this is a matane that the Eibishter gives. Obviously, he has to work to earn it, but even if you work the hardest, you're not going to reach it. And sometimes you have people, I want to be a tzaddik. How could I reach to become a tzaddik? And the answer is, you can't. Doesn't mean you have to be everywhere.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's true. I mean, just like not everybody could be a kohen, only the kohen goes into Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. A Yisrael does not. That's not their role. So that it's not an issue here of discrimination. That I can tell you right now. Wherever a non-Jew can reach, it's not a matter of discrimination or inferiority. Everyone has their role to play. Just like within the Shvatim, we have Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, etc. So you have many different ways to serve. It's not, that's for sure. That's not a matter of equality or inequality. The question is, what exactly can people reach, and is there a ceiling for certain individuals or not?
I wanted to ask you the point you were making that Neshamas Yisrael are higher than Torah in their conception, but as they come into the body, they're lower than Torah. Is that the summary that comes at the end of page 1408, about halfway through? It's about 10 lines above the beginning of the new paragraph. Is that what you were trying to refer to?
I mentioned 1408. You're referring to what I mentioned before?
Yeah, I think you said 1406, 1407, but you were looking for the Dafka, that point I just said.
No, I actually was referring to 1406 and 1407 explicitly. But then, if you want to have that reconciliation, you got to go back earlier. You got to go back to earlier. Look at page 1404. Or actually 1403 and 1404. That's where he really starts spelling out that there are two levels in the Shamas and two levels in Torah.
Yeah.
So it begins 1403, 1404. I was referring more to the Nitzutz cotton part. The idea of the Nitzutz and the Yechida and that. How Neshamas are rooted in that higher place. But the Torah Neshama relationship starts at 1403. And then continues, 1408 included. Yeah. You see?
Yeah.
1403. At the bottom of the page, he asked the question. We find two different midrashim, he says. Yeah. It's connected for sure to this, and we'll talk about it later, because remember, this whole section starts with the difference between, one of the questions the Rebbe Rashab never answers, what's the difference between the Adam of the Neshama and the Adam of Torah? If you remember, on page 1460, on 1350. 1350, he asked that question. He said, what's the difference between the Adam of Torah and the Adam of Neshamas? And there he talks about Olav Machshava very clearly, yeah. So
the only other place, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it all will connect, but that's going to come later. I don't want to, convolute matters all over the place. Just keep in mind what we learn now about Neshama is going to be connected later when we start getting back to Ner Mitzvah V'Teireh. Remember, the Rebbe Rashab also does not go back to Ner Mitzvah V'Teireh. Only Ner Hashem Nishmasodam. So now Mitzvah and Teireh will add something to the Neshama. But then the Neshama in turn adds something to Teireh and Mitzvahs too. So we will get back to that. I can assure you. I have it very clearly in my mind as part of the whole picture here. Okay. You wanted to say anything else? You or anybody?
No, I was just saying the only other place, just for your own edification, because it's later if you want. The only other place Nitzutz Katan appears in Chelik Gimel is on page 1293. I don't know if that helps you, and I didn't have a chance to read it, so it may be completely irrelevant, but I'm just saying I did a word search.
Okay. It's also in volume 2 and volume 1 as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
No, I mean, but fine. I'll look at it.
Aren't we saying here though? Aren't we saying here that
Sure.
everything is rooted in Atzmos with these Yichud, Tachlis, a Yichud, that just from Das Tachton, it looks like there's a yesh, but everything, this ultimate yichud of Das Tachton, Das Elyon, and Yichudi Tata and Yichudi Allah, it would show that everything in this world is atzmas, is rooted ultimately in atzmas. Is that not correct? Higher than Hishtalshlus, all the way to atzmas, because that were the two expressions of Helam Atzmi and Gilu or Etzem Or, but they're just two revelations of atzmas. So that would be what I think we've been learning. Everything ultimately,
but that's true even about a stone.
Right.
Everything, yeah. But a stone does not have a mitzvah of yichud. Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We're talking about the mitzvah of being miyached elikus. A stone can be rooted there, but it was not charged with a mission of revealing divine unity in this world. We're talking about the process of actually revealing this unity, not just that everything is unified.
Right. So we've skipped over to the part of avoda rather than Yishavas. The
It's
avoda.
not skip. That is Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Is that Yisroel is charged with a mission of revealing the highest levels of divine unity in existence. Right. It flows perfectly. After explaining this unity, how it is in reality, that even the unity from God's perspective, neshamas can reveal in this world, which is ultimately the three steps, and then, of course, the highest.
Right.
So, yes, they're revealing it in existence. They're revealing it about the stone and about a flower and about everything in existence. That's exactly the point, that all of existence, he says, Kol Hisavus, in Ayin Beis, he said the word, not just the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra, but he said, Kol Gam Kol Mashin Hisava, Kol Obchinis Hamshachim Min Ha'atzmos Sum Meyuchad. But who's recognizing that? Who is revealing it? Who is expressing it?
And who's experiencing it? Okay. Yeah. Good. I understand that now. Yeah. So that would include everybody. Okay. So that gets back to my other question you'll deal with another time about the rest of humanity. You'll deal with that.
Well, the rest of humanity also goes into creation. They're also part of creation, but being that they're human, there's another dimension to them. They're not just like a tree, like Tzameach, Chaim, and Daimon. There's something more to them. So clearly they're on a higher level. But we'll talk about that. Yeah.
And in the time of Geula, when it says a rock will even shout out, why aren't you learning Torah? And
that's all. That's
that
because
would be, they'll also inanimate domain and Sameach will also reach a conscious level
they will. I mean, even now, a stone does not defy God's will like a human being can. So a stone is doing exactly what God wants, even in Golus, right? But a stone also doesn't elevate the world and doesn't reveal anything. It is what it is. Just like the animals in the world, just like the sun and the moon, all fulfill God's will in this right now as we speak. But through our avodah of the thousands of years of our hard work, we refine the world, that the world will cry out, like you just said, the stones themselves will cry out. But that is a result of avodah. And I still would not say that the stones are the ones that are bringing unity to existence. No, I would say the opposite. Neshamas refine the world so much that even a very stone and a very tree and a fig tree will exude elikus.
Will have consciousness of that.
I don't know if the word consciousness is the right word. The fact that it says they'll cry out, "Don't touch me," doesn't mean they will become human. It just means that elikus will be seen in the existence itself. Existence today conceals the divine. So, for example, a body knows it's hungry, doesn't need to look anywhere. You just feel it's hungry. Your body feels when you're hungry. The body will also feel the need for godliness. So, in other words, the godliness will permeate to the point of existence, feeling godliness and revealing godliness. So, when you look at a flower, today you have to contemplate. When in the flower, you'll see the divine energy.
Probably this is what it means, Eben Mikir Tizak.
That's what he just referred to, yeah. V'nigla k'void Hashem v'ro kol basar yachdov.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, due to time, I'm going to stop here. But he's going to now continue and explain the Shema. Exactly what we learned now in Ayin Beis about Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad. That's the next line here. Who mashakosav Havaya Elokeinu dafke. We're going to talk about Havaya Elokeinu. We're going to talk about Havaya Echad. And this is going to go now in quite a few pages of explaining Shema. I see in the context of what we're learning, the Yichud of Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tatov, Das Elyon and Das Tachton. And then on page, I believe, 2 pages, 386 and 387, he goes back to V'haftas Hashem Elokeinu, the Nefesh Habamis. So we're finally going to get to the Nefesh Habamis shortly. We have a few more pages to go till we get there. Then on page 389, he goes back to the Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, the Psila, the Shemen, and the Ur. Yeah. And then at the bottom of 390, starts Ner Mitzvah V'Teira Ur. Just giving you the lay of the land here. So now we're going to more about Shema and the Yichud, all these levels of Yichud. Then about the Ner, then about Nefesh Habamis, and then back to Ner Mitzvah V'Teira Ur. Okay, good. So we'll stop here. We're stopping at a few lines into the paragraph on page 384. And we'll continue tomorrow.
I think it would be nice if our class would give a mazel tov to our esteemed member Yuval Harpak for his 80th birthday today.
Oh,
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Glad you're telling us. Mazel tov.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Shnas
Mazel
Hatzlacha.
tov.
Gashmis
I think
Bereishis.
he left the class. He left the class. But
Really? Oh my
I'll
God.
text him. I'll text him that he'll hear it. It's on the recording, but I'll text
Yeah,
him.
but tell him that we all said l'chaim to him.
I will. Leonetta, I'll do it.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that great?
What level does the Yid reach at 80? I don't even, doesn't talk about it.
Yes,
Sure
of course it does. Of course it does.
What is it? I forget the Mishnah. What does
The
it say?
Shmenim L'Gvura.
The Gvura. There we go.
Yeah.
Mazel tov.
He's one of the
It goes
pillars
all the way
of
to 100.
yeah,
90.
man.
Okay, good. There's room for us, right?
And he's one of the pillars of the Chabad community in Carmiel, Israel, and has a number of kids that are beautiful on Matzliach Shluchim and Shluchos in Israel. So he's really deserves a real big Yesher Koyach. It's a very big chassid.
He's also a very
Thank
good
you for
man.
making us aware.
I had the schus of introducing him to the class, by the way, Rabbi Jacobson.
Wow.
Yeah, I brought him to your house. He stays by me when he comes to Crown Heights. We're almost like family. And so I said, come to Rabbi Jacobson's class. You'll enjoy it. And he was blown away. And he's been with us for many years now. He doesn't miss it. He looks forward to it every day. That's
Beautiful.
really,
I know. And it's in Israel, middle of the day.
you'll highlight. Baruch Hashem.
Like it is for many of us.
It's too bad this part
but-
wasn't recorded. We could have
For
sent it. to him.
Yitzchak, it's before everybody wakes up.
Yeah.
6:30, and for him
6:30.
it's what is it? 7 hours ahead, so like 4:30.
Yeah. Oh. It's
That's
too bad
right.
this part wasn't recorded, right? This part wasn't recorded.
This is
It
recorded.
is recorded. We're still on recording.
Oh, great. So I'll tell him to check in. That's great.
I'll send him what we said and a link at this point in the
Oh,
class
that's nice.
because
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yitzhak.
By the way, Yitzchak, next week we're sending out the books to all those that had donated, the Hebrew edition, the special edition.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I was in touch with Rashi, and she mentioned they were getting it all together.
Yeah, we wanted to write a letter and a sign. It's a production.
Lovely. Did you make your? Did you reach your fundraising goal?
Yeah. Maybe a little off,
Wow.
not almost, but close to it. I have to check the final because some money came in through online that I'm not even aware of. So we didn't yet tally it all up. Should be pretty close.
Mazel tov.
And it's going
By the
well.
way, you're still recording.
I know that. Let me stop the recording right now. So we're on